He said he loved her. He said he wanted a future. He said, "Trust me, I'm the man." She sold everything for that future. Then one morning, his messages stopped delivering. This is how modern love scams work. Not with threats. Not with force. But with soft voices, trauma stories, and fake futures. This man emotionally destroyed multiple women. And disappeared with everything they had. If you've ever trusted someone too quickly, you need to hear this story. She met him on a Tuesday. Nothing poetic. No fireworks. Just a message that landed softly in her inbox at exactly 9:17 p.m., the hour when loneliness tends to loosen its grip on caution. "Hey. I don't usually do this, but your smile looks kind." That was it. No pressure. No desperation. Just kindness. She replied. His name was Daniel. He spoke in complete sentences. Used punctuation. Never rushed. Never pushed. He asked about her day, not her body. He remembered details. He didn't disappear mid-conversation. When she said she was tired, he told her to rest. When she didn't reply for hours, he didn't accuse her, he apologized for disturbing her peace. It felt safe. Daniel said he worked remotely. Consulting. Investments. The kind of job that sounded impressive without being specific. He never bragged. In fact, he did the opposite, downplayed himself constantly. "I'm just trying to figure life out like everyone else." That line would later haunt her. Within a week, he had shared his first wound. His father died young. His mother struggled. He grew up watching bills pile higher than hope. He talked about hunger, about nights spent pretending to sleep so his younger siblings could eat more. He never cried when he said it, but he always paused, like the memory still pressed against his chest. She listened. She felt chosen. Men rarely opened up to her like that. Most wanted something quick. Loud. Disposable. But Daniel wanted connection. Or so it seemed. "You feel different," he told her one night. "I feel like I've known you before." The sentence slid past her defenses like silk. Love bombing didn't arrive as an explosion. It arrived as consistency. Good morning text. Long voice notes. Late night calls where he'd fall asleep on the line, breathing softly, like proof that he was real. He prayed with her. Asked about her dreams. Encouraged her goals. Spoke about marriage like it was sacred, not scary. "You're the kind of woman a man builds with," he said. Not plays with. She began to rearrange her days around him. Friends notice first. "You're always on your phone. You've been distant. Are you sure this guy is real?" She defended him effortlessly. "You don't understand him like I do." Daniel never asked her to cut anyone off. He didn't have to. Every time she was about to meet friends, something happened. He'd have a rough day. A nightmare. A reminder of his past. "I hate burdening you," he'd say quietly. "I just don't have anyone else who understands." So she stayed. Then came the future talk. Not dramatic. Not rushed. Carefully planted. "If I ever get married again," he said once, casually, "I want it to be my last." Again. That word lingered. She asked about it. He hesitated. Long pause. Then the confession. He had loved once. Deeply. Trusted the wrong woman. She betrayed him financially. Took his savings. Left him broken. "I promised myself I'd never let anyone control me like that again." The irony was surgical. She reassured him. She softened. She leaned in closer. That's when money entered the conversation, not as a request, but as a fear. I'm scared of being poor again, he admitted. I've worked too hard to go back there. Weeks later, he shared an opportunity. Not a pitch. A thought. A friend of his was building something. Real estate. Crypto. Foreign exchange. The details shifted depending on the day, but the theme stayed the same: growth. I wish I had more capital, he said. With enough starting funds, I could finally secure our future. She offered nothing. But he went quiet. Less responsive. Still kind, but distant. Like a man weighed down by responsibility. She asked what was wrong. I shouldn't have said anything, he replied. It's not your burden. That night, she couldn't sleep. She thought about her savings. The small inheritance she'd kept untouched. The car she barely used. The jewelry sitting idle. She brought it up herself. What if I help? She asked. Daniel resisted. At first. No. I could never take from you. I don't want you to regret me. If anything happened, I'd never forgive myself. It took 3 days for him to agree. Not eagerly. Reluctantly. Like a man sacrificing his pride. She transferred the first amount on a Friday. He sent screenshots. Charts. Profits. Numbers rising just enough to excite, not enough to alarm. He praised her faith. Called her his backbone. His answered prayer. You're building with me, he said. Most women just take. The second transfer was larger. Then the third. By the fourth, she sold her car. By the fifth, she borrowed. Daniel praised her strength publicly. Posted vague captions about gratitude and real women. Never tagged her. Never showed her face. Slowly, he began correcting her. How she dressed. Who she spoke to. What she shared online. Not because I'm controlling, he said. Because I want to protect us. When friends warned her, he sighed. They are jealous. They don't want to see you grow. Misery loves company. She stopped answering their calls. By the time she realized she was alone, she was already surrounded by his voice, his needs, his plans. Then one morning, the messages didn't deliver. Calls went straight to voicemail. His profile picture vanished. The investment dashboard wouldn't load. Her bank account was empty. And the test strip in her bathroom bloomed with 2 red lines. She sat on the floor for a long time. Not crying. Just replaying his sentences in her head, every pause, every confession, every soft word, until one thought cut through the fog like glass. He was never reacting to her. He was performing. And somewhere out there, 3 other women were probably staring at their own silence, wondering how love had learned to lie so fluently. She didn't tell anyone at first. Not about the money. Not about the pregnancy. Not about the way her phone felt suddenly useless in her hand, like an object from a past life. She kept checking it anyway, refreshing, opening apps, typing his name into the search bar as if repetition might summon him back into existence. Daniel had vanished cleanly. No rage text. No goodbye. No dramatic exit. Just absence. That was when the second damage revealed itself, not the financial one, but the psychological one. The realization that there was nothing to react to. No explanation to argue with. No lie to dissect in real time. Only silence, which offered no resistance and therefore no closure. Her mind tried to protect her. Maybe he was kidnapped. Maybe his phone was stolen. Maybe something terrible happened. She emailed. She called from borrowed numbers. She messaged accounts she thought were his friends. Nothing. Then she logged into her email and saw it. A notification she had ignored weeks ago. A password change request. Not recent. Odd. He hadn't disappeared overnight. He had been leaving for weeks. The investments were fake. The dashboards were templated screenshots. The friend never existed. The slow distancing, the subtle emotional cooling, it wasn't stress. It was completion. He had reached the end of her usefulness. She vomited in the sink when that thought landed. Not because it was cruel, but because it was accurate. The pregnancy became real in fragments. Morning sickness. A heaviness in her body that no amount of denial could override. She tried to calculate timelines, matching dates to memories, voice notes, promises. Daniel had spoken about children once. I want to be the kind of father I never had. He had said it softly, like a confession. Now the words felt rehearsed. She finally told a friend. The first one she had pushed away. The silence on the other end of the call lasted longer than she expected. Then the friend said something that cracked the ground beneath her. You're not the first woman to tell me this. That sentence rearranged everything. The friend explained carefully. Hesitantly. Another woman. Different name. Same story. Same tone. Same man. Remote work. Tragic past. Investment opportunity. Disappearance. Same cadence. Same pauses. Same love. They met the other woman 2 days later. She was thinner. Quieter. Eyes permanently braced, like she expected impact at any moment. When she spoke about him, she used the same phrases without realizing it. He made me feel safe. He never pressured me. He said I was different. When they compared messages, the similarities became impossible to ignore. Entire sentences repeated. Word for word. Not paraphrased. Reused. The third woman came later. She didn't cry. She laughed. A sharp, broken sound. I thought I was stupid, she said. But he's just thorough. That was the word that stuck. Thorough. Daniel hadn't improvised. He had refined. Each woman represented a different phase of his process. One funded his beginnings. Another scaled him. The third maximized returns. Each relationship overlapped slightly, staggered just enough to avoid collision. He didn't juggle them emotionally. He scheduled them. Love, for him, was not a feeling. It was a workflow. The women began mapping timelines. Overlaying dates. Identifying patterns. He always entered their lives during a vulnerable period. Grief. Career instability. Emotional fatigue. He always mirrored their values. Religion when needed. Ambition when required. Traditional masculinity when it benefited him. He never argued. He redirected. He never demanded. He implied. The pregnancy complicated everything. Not because he would return, but because it tethered her to a man who had never existed in the first place. How do you grieve someone who was a composite of borrowed traits? How do you explain to a child that their father was a script? She reported him. The response was polite. Limited. Scams without physical violence moved slowly. Jurisdictional issues. Fake identities. Digital trails that evaporated as soon as you reached for them. Daniel had planned for that too. One night, while scrolling aimlessly, she saw his face. Not his name. His face. Different username. Different platform. Same eyes. Same soft smile. Same carefully neutral bio. Entrepreneur. Growth-focused. Family-oriented. He was already talking to someone new. She didn't message him. She watched. She saw him type the same opening line. Hey? I don't usually do this, but your smile looks kind. Her hands shook. Because now she understood something terrifying. Daniel wasn't hiding. He wasn't running. He was walking. And somewhere, another woman was replying, feeling chosen, feeling seen, unaware that she had just stepped into a role already written, already rehearsed, already paid for by the wreckage of others. She learned restraint the hard way. Every instinct in her screamed to warn the new woman. To break the spell before it sealed. To type everything, screenshots, timelines, proof, dump it all into a single message, and it sounded like pulling a fire alarm. But one of the other women stopped her. "He won't look like a villain to her yet," she said. "He looks like hope." That was the cruelest part. Truth bounced off people who were still being held gently. So she watched. She watched Daniel calibrate himself again. With the new woman, he leaned into humor first. Light jokes. Self-deprecation. He tested her reactions like a scientist adjusting variables. When she laughed, he leaned in. When she hesitated, he softened. Within days, the tone shifted, less playful, more intimate. He asked about her childhood. Her fears. Her plans. He never shared his full story at once. He drip-fed pain. Just enough to trigger empathy. Never enough to overwhelm. That's how he kept control, by staying slightly wounded. Permanently unfinished. A man always on the edge of healing, just needing the right woman to believe in him. She noticed how he mirrored vocabulary. If the woman talked about faith, he became prayerful. If she talked about hustle, he became visionary. If she spoke about trauma, he became gentle. There was no core. Only adaptation. The realization didn't come with rage. It came with nausea. Because it meant the intimacy she thought they shared had never been intimate at all. It was procedural. He didn't love her personality, he mapped it. He didn't cherish her vulnerabilities, he catalogued them. The pregnancy advanced quietly. Her body changed while her life shrunk. Doctor appointments alone. Paperwork alone. Nights spent staring at the ceiling, replaying moments she once thought were real, first I miss you, first plan, first future promise. Now each memory felt counterfeit. Like holding a photo and realizing the person inside it never stood where you thought they did. The other women drifted in and out of contact. Healing moved unevenly. One wanted justice. One wanted silence. One wanted to forget the entire chapter like it had never happened. She couldn't forget. Not with a life growing inside her. She began writing everything down. Not as a diary. As documentation. Dates. Words. Behavioral patterns. Emotional triggers. She wrote about the way he always waited exactly 45 minutes before replying after a disagreement. How he apologized without admitting fault. How he never raised his voice, because calm made him seem reasonable even when he was wrong. She wrote about how he framed masculinity. I'm the man, I carry the burden. I just want to lead us properly. A woman shouldn't stress herself with these things. It wasn't dominance. It was delegation. He convinced women to hand over control willingly, then called it trust. The writing became her anchor. Some nights, fear crept in. What if he came back? What if he denied everything? What if he tried to charm his way into her child's life? But the fear was laced with something else now. Clarity. She could see the seams in him. The pauses that were once romantic now felt mechanical. The tenderness, strategic. Even his silences were tools, used to provoke reassurance, obedience, pursuit. He hadn't stolen just money. He had stolen time. Months of emotional labor. Years of recovery. Futures rerouted. And he had done it efficiently. As the due date approached, she stopped watching his profile. Not because he stopped. Because she had something he never planned for. A responsibility that forced her to become real again. The night before she went into labor, she listened to an old voice note of his by accident. Her finger slipped. His voice filled the room, warm, steady, familiar. For a split second, her body reacted before her mind caught up. Then she deleted everything. All the messages. All the photos. All the recordings. Not to protect him. To free herself. Daniel would continue. Men like him always do. But he would do it without her story to feed on. Without her silence to cushion his exit. Without her belief to complete the script. Somewhere, another woman would meet him on a random day. A Tuesday. A quiet hour. A moment of openness. And he would say the line again. But this time, it wouldn't be the same. Because the woman he left behind was no longer confused. She was watching the pattern, not as a victim, but as evidence. Labor didn't feel dramatic. There was no rush of meaning, no cinematic clarity. Just pain that came in waves and paperwork that asked questions she didn't know how to answer. Father's name. She left it blank. The nurse didn't ask why. That mercy stayed with her. In the weeks that followed, sleep became a rumor. Time lost its edges. Days were measured in feedings, cries, small victories that no one applauded. Her world narrowed to a human being who depended on her entirely, and that dependence did something unexpected. It restored her sense of reality. There was no room for illusions at 3 a.m. No space for romantic reinterpretation when your body ached and your hands shook from exhaustion. The love Daniel had performed could not survive this environment. It required distance. Mystery. Soft lighting. Real life burned it away. Still, his presence lingered, not as longing, but as analysis. She began noticing him everywhere. In social media language. In podcast advice. In high-value man conversations framed as empowerment. The phrases repeated. Lead with vision. Women want security. Don't overshare, stay mysterious. Daniel hadn't invented himself. He had assembled himself. Piece by piece, from forums and videos and mail spaces that treated emotional intelligence like a hunting skill. He was a student of vulnerability, not to heal, but to harvest. She wondered how long he had been practicing before he met her. Years, probably. Long enough to know that the most effective lies weren't extravagant, they were familiar. They sounded like things women had already heard, already hoped for. He didn't promise fantasy. He promised sense. That's what made him dangerous. One afternoon, months later, she received a message from a stranger. Short. Careful. Hi. This is going to sound strange. But did you ever know a man named Daniel who worked in investments? Her chest tightened, but not with panic. With recognition. She replied slowly. Yes. The woman sent screenshots. Different face angle. Same smile. Same cadence. Same opening line. The woman was still in the early stage. The gentle stage. The stage where he listened more than he spoke. Where the mask was light enough to feel like sincerity. She considered what to do. Warning too early would sound like jealousy. Trauma. Projection. She knew that now. So she asked questions instead. How long had they been talking? What did he say about his past? Had money come up yet? Not yet. But it would. It always did. Daniel followed a timeline the way other people followed instinct. Trust first. Dependency next. Transfer later. Exit last. The woman thanked her for listening. Listen. That word mattered. Because that was how Daniel always began. She realized something else then, something quieter, heavier. Stopping him entirely might be impossible. But interrupting him wasn't. A single question at the right time could destabilize the script. A moment of doubt could slow the transfer. A pause could save months. Maybe years. Maybe not everyone. But someone. She didn't become a crusader. She didn't post exposés or start threads. She became a whisper. A presence in inboxes. A calm voice that asked neutral questions. That mirrored concern instead of panic. That didn't demand belief, just attention. Some women ignored her. Some blocked her. Some came back weeks later, shaken. He asked me to sell my car. He said my friends were jealous. He stopped replying when I said no. Each message reinforced what she already knew. Daniel wasn't evolving. He was repeating. And repetition left residue. Patterns grew visible. Overlaps formed. Digital footprints crossed. The internet, unlike memory, kept receipts. One day, she searched his face again. It was still there. But the comments had changed. Subtle. Is this the same guy from? Didn't you use another name before? Something feels off. The spell was weakening. Not because of one woman. But because time always betrays men who rely on sameness. Scripts fail when audiences compare notes. She rocked her child to sleep that night and felt something unfamiliar settle in her chest. Not peace. Resolve. Daniel would keep moving. But so would she. And unlike him, she was no longer pretending to be anything she wasn't. Years passed. Not loudly. Not ceremoniously. Just the way time does when it's done trying to be kind and decides to be honest instead. Her child learned to walk. Then talk. Then ask questions that required careful answers. Where's my dad? She never lied. She just chose precision. Some people don't know how to stay, she said once. And that has nothing to do with the people they leave. The child accepted it the way children accept gravity, not happily, not angrily. Just as a fact of the world. Daniel's name stopped hurting. That surprised her the most. One day she realized she hadn't thought of him in weeks. Not with bitterness. Not with curiosity. He had shrunk into something small and unimportant, like a bad neighborhood you no longer had to drive through. The messages slowed. The whispers did their quiet work. His patterns became searchable. His faces overlapped across platforms. The sameness that once made him efficient now made him traceable. He changed names more often. A sign of strain. He shortened the courtship phase. Asked for money faster. Took bigger risks. Men like Daniel don't adapt well when the environment stops cooperating, they confuse urgency with evolution. That's when mistakes creep in. A reused photo. A forgotten alias. A woman who doesn't block, doesn't confront, just documents. One afternoon, a final message came through, from someone she didn't know, but somehow did. It's him. They arrested him. She didn't rush to respond. She read the message twice. Fraud. Multiple counts. Digital financial crimes. Cross-border complaints finally stitched together into something solid enough to hold weight. He hadn't been caught because he hurt women. He'd been caught because he followed a system long enough for the system to notice. Daniel never reached out. She doubted he would have even recognized her name by then. To him, women were chapters, not characters. Functions, not people. She imagined him sitting somewhere plain, finally stripped of narrative. No tragic backstory. No soft pauses. No audience to adjust himself for. Just a man without a script. That image brought her no joy. Just confirmation. Years later, she deleted the last document she had kept. Not because it wasn't true. but because it no longer belonged to her. She had rebuilt quietly. Not into someone stronger, not into a cautionary tale, just into someone real. Someone who trusted again, slowly. Someone who recognized intimacy by its weight, not its performance. Her child slept in the next room. Oh. Safe. Loved. Daniel became a story she told only when necessary. Not to scare. Not to warn dramatically. Just to remind others that manipulation doesn't always shout, it often whispers exactly what you want to hear. And when the night settled, and the world grew quiet, she understood the final truth he had never planned for. He had taken money. Time. Pieces of identity. But he had failed at the one thing he thought he controlled best. He did not get the ending. She did. Not everyone who smiles at you is who they seem. Some people don't just steal money, they steal trust, time, even your sense of self. Love bombing. Sweet words. Vulnerability stories. All tools. All rehearsed. They isolate you, manipulate you, until there's nothing left to give. The truth. Patterns reveal the scam. Observation, awareness, and boundaries protect you. Your friends, your instincts, your finances, they're part of your armor. And here's the most important lesson. You control your ending. They can take money, moments, even illusions of love. But they cannot take your future, your choices, your life. Stay aware. Protect yourself. And never let anyone else write your story. Kindly subscribe, like, and comment for more interesting stories.